Yeah. Why did he say he was going? Where did he say he was going on the boat all night? Chapter 8, right? Oh yeah, it must be page 71. I'll be. Oh yeah, that's it. Is the weather right? That's that question, right? Is the weather good for fishing? And we already know that they go fishing all the time anyway. So it must mean some kind of code talk or what's up. Grace had made the prediction of all right, they're heading on a boat. They're going to Sweden. Um, so he said, Mama's spending the whole day getting the house cleaned. Girls were playing around. They actually picked flowers. So how perfect was that for a funeral almost? So like right, they have flowers now in the house. Um, and he said, we'll leave. I'll be going back to the boat tonight after supper. We'll leave very early in the morning, and I will stay on the boat all night. Yeah, it is. So this is historical fiction for sure. Because a lot of these events, this war did happen. These events did happen. Now, was there an actually little girl named Anne Marie that went through this? Probably not. Is there families that went through similar stuff than this? 100%. Were they hiding Jewish kids in their houses or in secret compartments? Yes. Were they using fake IDs and things to try to escape the country? Absolutely. So this is kind of just an inside look. Yes.
But it's also called Number the Stars, so like it's not called someone dies.
True.
It's like
Now we're going to talk about
Number
that.
the Stars, so like
What's the significance of that
I
name?
feel like maybe they go on the boat like at night or something.
Oh my.
And like they sneak out because like you're not gonna go in daylight and people see you. Like
Kind of reminds you of like slavery stuff too, right? Like following the street. But what'd you just say too? Right, because remember what their symbol is, right? Star of David. So there must be some connection, right, to this title, to why it's called this. All right, let's roll. So you're right. And again, Ellen still doesn't have her parents, right? They're still. This is like what, day 3 or 4. No idea what that is. No idea where Ellen's rest of her family is. Peter, yeah, we don't know any of that. All right, chapter 9. Why are you lying? Anne Marie went outside alone after supper. Through the open kitchen window, she could hear Mama and Ellen talking as they washed the dishes. Kirsty, she knew, was busy on the floor, playing with those old dolls she found upstairs, the dolls that had been Mama's once, long ago. The kitten had fled when she tried to dress it and disappeared. She wandered to the barn, where Uncle Heinrich was milking Blossom. He was kneeling on the straw-covered floor beside the cow. He shoulder pressed against her heavy side, his strong tanned hands rhythmically urging her milk into the spotless bucket. The god of thunder sat alertly poised nearby, watching. Blossom looked up at Anne Marie with the big brown eyes and moved her wrinkled mouth like an old woman adjusting false teeth. Anne Marie leaned against the ancient splintery wood of the barn wall and listened to the sharp, rattling sound of the streams of milk as they hit the sides of the bucket. Uncle Heinrich glanced over at her and smiled without pausing in rhythm of milking. He didn't say anything. Through the barn windows, the pinkish light of sunset fell in irregular shapes upon the stacked hay. Flecks of dust and straw floated there in the light. Can you picture that? You know when dust is like in where light shines? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. My little 2-year-old tries to like eat it. He goes, I'm trying to do it like that. It's like, what is that?
yes, and then the sun goes away.
Yes. Uncle Heinrich, Anne Marie said suddenly, her voice cold. You're lying to me. You and Mama both. His strong hands continued, deftly pressing like a pulse against the cow. The steady streams of milk still came. He looked at her again, his deep blue eyes kind and questioning. You're angry, he said. Yes. Mama has never lied to me before. Never. But I know there is no great Aunt Bertie. Never once. In all the stories I've heard, in all the old pictures I've seen, has there ever been a great Aunt Bertie. Uncle Heinrich sighed. Blossom looked back at him, as if to say, almost done. And indeed, the streams of milk lessened and slowed. He tugged at the cow gently but firmly, pulling down the last of the milk. The bucket was half full, frothy on the top. Finally, he set it aside and washed the cow's udder with a clean, damp cloth. Then he lifted the bucket to a shelf and covered it. He rubbed the cow's neck affectionately. At last, he turned to Anne Marie and wiped his own hands with the cloth. How brave are you, little Anne Marie? He asked suddenly. She was startled and dismayed. It was a question she did not want to be asked. When she asked if it was for herself, she didn't like the answer. Not very, she confessed, looking at the front or the floor of the barn. Tall Uncle Heinrich knelt before her so that his face was level with hers. Behind him, Blossom lowered her head, grasped a mouthful of hay in her mouth, and drew it in with her tongue. The kitten cocked its head, waiting, still hoping for spilled milk. I think that's not true, Uncle Heinrich said. I think you're like your mama, and like your papa, and like me. Frightened, but determined. And if the time came to be brave, I am quite sure you would be very, very brave. But, he added, it is much easier to be brave if you do not know everything. And so your mama doesn't know everything, and neither do I. We know only what we need to know. It's pretty. I want you to think about that right there. Do you understand what I'm saying? He asked, looking in her eyes. Anne Marie frowned. She wasn't sure. What did bravery mean? She had been very frightened that day, not long ago, though now it seemed far in the past, when the soldier had stopped her on the street and asked her questions in his rough voice. And she had not known everything then. She had not known that the Germans were going to take away the Jews. And so, when the soldier asked, looking at Ellen that day, "What's your friend's name?" she was able to answer him, even though she was frightened. If she had known everything, it would have not been easy to be brave. She began to understand just a little. "Yeah," she said to Uncle Heinrich. "I think I understand." "You guessed correctly," he told her. "There is no great Aunt Bertie, and there never has been. Your mama lied to you, and so did I. We did so," he explained, "to help you to be brave, because we love you. Will you forgive us for that?" Anne Marie nodded. She felt older suddenly. You ever get a secret like that from like someone in your family and you feel like you're more old now, like more responsible because you found that out? Like, don't tell your little cousins or don't tell your little sister. You know what I mean? Kind of makes you feel that way. I'm not going to tell you any more. Not now, and for the same reason. You understand? Anne Marie nodded again. Suddenly there was a noise outside. Uncle Heinrich's shoulders stiffened. He rose quickly, went to the window of the barn, stood in the shadows and looked out. Then he turned back to Anne Marie. "It is here, the hearse." The hearse is the big long thing that holds the casket in a funeral. That long car. He said, "It's Great Aunt Bertie, who never was." He smiled wryly. "So, my little friend, it is time for the night of mourning to begin. Are you ready?" Anne Marie took her uncle's hand, and he led her from the barn.
This is like an imaginary friend. Like what if nobody
Something.
What if they put Ellen in a casket?
Let's see.
And send her in the water?
Let's see. The gleaming wooden casket rested on support. Oh, there really is a casket. Rested on supports in the center of the living room and was surrounded by fragile, papery flowers that Anne Marie and Ellen had picked that afternoon. Lighted candles stood in the holders on the table and cast a soft, flickering light. The hearse had gone, and the solemn-faced men who had carried the casket indoors had gone with it, after speaking quietly to Uncle Heinrich. Kirsty had gone to bed reluctantly, complaining that she wanted to stay up with the others, that she was grown up enough, that she had never before seen a dead person in a closed-up box, that it wasn't fair. But Mama had been firm, and finally Kirsty, sulking, had trudged upstairs with her dolls under one arm and the kitten under the other. Ellen was silent and had a sad expression. "I'm so sorry about your Aunt Bertie died," Anne Marie heard her say to Mama, who smiled sadly and thanked her. So Ellen doesn't know, right? Anne Marie had listened and said nothing. So now I, too, am lying, she thought, and to my very best friend. I could tell Ellen that it wasn't true, that there was no great Aunt Bertie. I could take her aside and whisper the secret to her so that she wouldn't have to feel sad. But she didn't. She understood that she was protecting Ellen the way her mother had protected her. And although she didn't understand what was happening, or why the casket was there, or who, in truth, was in it, she knew that it was better, safer, for Ellen to believe in great Aunt Bertie. So she said nothing. Other people came as the night sky grew darker. A man and a woman, both of them dressed in dark clothing. The woman carrying a sleeping baby appeared at the door, and Uncle Heinrich gestured them inside. They nodded to Mama and to the girls. They went, following Uncle Heinrich, to the living room and sat down quietly. Friends of great Aunt Bertie, Mama said quietly in response to Anne Marie's questioning look. Anne Marie knew that Mama was lying again, and she could see that Mama understood that she knew. They looked at each other for a long time and said nothing. In that moment, with that look, they became equals. From the living room came the sound of a sleepy baby's brief wail. Anne Marie glanced through the door and saw the woman open her blouse and begin to nurse the infant, who quieted. Another man arrived, an old man, bearded. Quietly, he went to the living room and sat down, saying nothing to the others, who only glanced at him. The young woman lifted her baby's blanket, covering its face with her own breast. The old man bent his head forward and closed his eyes, as if he were praying. His mouth moved silently, forming words that no one could hear. Anne Marie stood in the doorway, watching the mourners as they sat in the candlelit room. Then she turned back to the kitchen and began to help Ellen and Mama as they prepared food. In Copenhagen, she remembered, when Lisa died, friends had come to their apartment every evening. All of them had brought food so that Mama wouldn't need to cook. Why hadn't these people brought food? Why didn't they talk? In Copenhagen, even though the talk was sad, people had spoke softly to one another and Mama and Papa. They had talked about Lisa, remembering happier times. Thinking about it as she sliced cheese in the kitchen, Anne Marie realized that these people had nothing to talk about. They couldn't speak of happier times with great Aunt Bertie when there had never been a great Aunt Bertie at all. Uncle Heinrich came into the kitchen. He glanced at his watch and then at Mama. It's getting late, he said. I should go to the boat. He looked worried. He blew out the candle so there would be no light at all and opened the door. He stared beyond the gnarled apple tree into the darkness. Good. Here they come, he said in a low, relieved voice. Ellen, come with me. Ellen looked questioningly toward Mama, who nodded. Go with Heinrich, she said. Anne Marie watched, still holding the wedge of firm cheese in her hand, as Ellen followed Uncle Heinrich into the yard. She could hear a sharp, low cry from Ellen, and the sound of voices speaking softly. In a moment, Uncle Heinrich returned. Behind him was Peter Nelson. Tonight, Peter went first to Mama and hugged her. Then he hugged Anne Marie and kissed her on the cheek. But he said nothing. There was no playfulness to his affection tonight, just a sense of urgency, of worry. He went immediately to the living room, looked around, and nodded at the silent people there. Ellen was still outside. But in the moment, the door opened and she returned, held tightly, like a little girl, her bare legs dangling against her father's chest. Her mother was beside them.
Now they're hiding the parents there. Now the next chapter is called Let Us Open the Casket. Can we read this chapter? Can we read part 2? Who's the dead person?